Have you ever wondered how the world's wealthiest nation spiraled into a decade-long economic depression? Well, let me take you back to the period between 1929 and 1939, a time known as the Great Depression. It was a time when prosperity turned to despair, not just in the United States but across the globe. The epicenter of this economic earthquake was the United States, the world's leading economic power. The tremors started with the infamous Wall Street crash of 1929. This crash wasn't just a stumble or a fall, it was a nosedive that shook the very foundations of the American economy. This financial cataclysm didn't stop at the US borders. It spread, causing economic devastation worldwide. But the Wall Street crash wasn't the only culprit. It was the spark that ignited a powder keg of economic problems. So, the Wall Street crash of 1929 lit the fuse. But what were the other factors that contributed to this colossal economic downfall? Well, let's delve deeper into that in the next scene. Imagine a perfect storm, but instead of wind and rain, it's economic policies and market practices. Let's dive into the heart of this economic tempest, the Great Depression. Picture the 1920s, a time of prosperity and growth. But beneath the surface, the economy was like a house of cards ready to tumble. One of the main causes? The unequal distribution of wealth. The rich were getting richer, while the majority of Americans saw little improvement in their standard of living. This growing gap between the rich and the poor created an unstable economy, teetering on the edge of disaster. Next, let's talk about the stock market. In the late 1920s, the stock market saw rapid expansion. It was a bull market, with people buying stocks on margin, essentially borrowing money to buy more stocks. This worked well while the market was rising, but as soon as it started to fall, panic set in. Investors tried to sell their stocks, but there were no buyers. The market crashed, and with it, so did the economy. Now, let's not forget about the role of economic policies. The government's decision to stick to the gold standard limited the amount of money in circulation, contributing to deflation. When the Federal Reserve tightened monetary policy in the late 1920s, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire, exacerbating the economic downturn. And then, as if the economic disaster wasn't enough, Mother Nature also played her part. The Dust Bowl of the 1930s devastated agricultural production in the Midwest. Crops failed, farms went under, and thousands of families were forced to pack up and leave in search of better opportunities. So you see, the Great Depression was the result of a perfect storm of economic disaster, an unstable economy, reckless stock market practices, ill-advised economic policies, and a devastating ecological event, combined to create one of the worst economic downturns in history. So, the causes were multifaceted and intricate, but what about the consequences? How did the Great Depression impact the world? Picture a world where 1 in 4 people are unemployed, where breadlines stretch around the block, where hope seems lost. This was the grim reality during the Great Depression, a time characterized by widespread poverty and despair. With jobs scarce and food even scarcer, many people were forced to rely on soup kitchens and bread lines for their daily meals. But the consequences of this economic downturn extended far beyond financial hardship. It led to a massive social and political upheaval. Traditional values and norms were questioned as never before. The shattering of the American dream led to a loss of faith in the capitalist system and sparked a surge in popularity for alternative ideologies, including socialism and communism. In this sea of despair, the New Deal emerged as a beacon of hope. Proposed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, it was a series of programs, public work projects, and financial reforms aimed at providing relief for the poor, reforming the financial system, and stimulating economic recovery. The New Deal brought about significant changes, including the establishment of Social Security and the regulation of banks and the stock market. But perhaps the most profound impact of the Great Depression was the way it changed our perspective on economics. It underscored the importance of government intervention in times of economic crisis and highlighted the interdependence of the global economy. The Great Depression left an indelible mark on the world, changing the course of history and the way we view economics. In a nutshell, the Great Depression was a catastrophe unlike any other. It was a perfect storm of economic disaster, brought on by a combination of stock market crashes, banking failures, and poor policy decisions. The consequences were severe and far-reaching, leading to widespread unemployment, poverty, and a drastic change in the world order. But by understanding the Great Depression, we can learn from the past, recognizing the signs and taking action to prevent such a disaster from happening again. Understanding the Great Depression allows us to learn from the past to build a more resilient future.